Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thank you very much for joining me here. I hope you're having an amazing day. We're going to take another look here at Optimism OP. In fact, this is the first time I'm covering this, but I've gotten a lot of requests for it because it's a kind of a newer airdrop, and I was just kind of asked by multiple parties, can I cover this coin and kind of see what's going on? Now, to preface, if you're new to the channel or even if you're old, thank you again for watching. But what I'm getting at is that something like this is there's not a lot of data, right? So I totally know that's the elephant in the room here. And you can't base old data with new data, or without the old data, if that makes any sense. In other words, there's not enough here to really make a thorough analysis. But what we can still cover is some best practice and maybe compare it with Bitcoin, see kind of how much in synonymous behavior it might be performing, and just generally kind of try to understand that. Okay, so yes, I get it. We're not going to be able to draw a lot of data with 4 trading days worth of content, so just keep that in mind. That said, why don't we go ahead and start with, well, usually I start with the daily and look at some of the traditional indicators. Those indicators are null and void because it's a smaller, well, not enough data, of course. RSI needs 14 days worth of data, MACD 12 and 26, so we really don't have those kind of factors, and we won't for a while. And that's perfectly fine because that really won't tell us much anyways for at least a few weeks. But what we can do is look at maybe 4 hour and kind of identify a few things, kind of see if there's any kind of exhaustive states or continuation. We can look at Fibonacci retracement as well and kind of get at least a decent amount of material here and kind of see roughly where it could go if it were to, and to see if it's working along the lines of Fibonacci retracement. And this is a very common tool to use when you don't have much data. It's an even better tool to use when you have a lot of data, but generally speaking at this point, we want to kind of focus on that. And let's see if we got, again, we have barely enough information for RSI. There's over 14 candles for the 4 hour time frame here. So we do have the price averaging itself out over 50 on the RSI, which does imply that we have a support level right at about $1.28. So 128, I would say, is probably the most recent low that we should expect the price to hit. Again, pending what Bitcoin does, it's kind of a big factor there, but why don't we do this here? Let's go ahead and compare this with Bitcoin and kind of see. If we go back here, take a look at Bitcoin's behavior in the last roughly the same time frame. We see it down, up, over, and then of course we go to OP. It's similar in ways. Doing a little bit better here in this time frame once more, but generally speaking, you can see similar patterns, if that makes any sense. And it's important to identify, while this isn't enough data to really say that there is a correlation, you can kind of just generally say that at least there's a similarity, right? So Bitcoin has a bad day soon. Optimism could also be not so optimistic, right? Or I would not be optimistic about this coin if Bitcoin has a bad day. Granted, a lot of things can change that, and a lot of that's fundamental and stuff that you can't see right now. But the truth is here, volume is required for the price to increase. Okay, we had some nice volume roughly 2 days ago, and that is roughly when Bitcoin was trying to recover off of its immediate sell-off. Now, it didn't have a good ICO date. This is like destruction day for Bitcoin, right? We went down like 7%. So obviously its ICO was pretty much damaged. So what that does tell us though is that it very well could, and a lot of times we see this when ICOs have like a pretty high starting point and it closes fairly low, it really just implies that, well, it opened too high, but on the same accord, a lot of times it'll work within that. In other words, the higher Fibonacci retracement level here is within the range of where the candlestick opened or had hit its highest point on that day. Therefore, kind of reiterating the fact that we could very well see a price point in the $2 range, okay, eventually. Doesn't necessarily have to be today or immediately, but we are, and here's some positive here, we are making higher lows in the overall sense of things, and currently trying to establish higher highs. Now, this higher high, you could argue, is that, but I don't really care about the ICO date, honestly. I kind of just disregard it. So generally speaking here, we're making higher lows, and I'd much rather higher lows than higher highs. Okay, so if we got higher lows here, it's just inevitable for the price to kind of work its way sideways and then break this upper trend line, or this the resistance level, so to speak. So generally speaking, we're looking pretty good here in that way. Let's go ahead and pull this out here a little further. Just kind of do one of those. So again, all in all, this does look pretty decent. It does look like it wants to continue to trend upwards, essentially creating higher lows for the moment. All right, again, I like to focus on that. The higher low is more appropriate, more effective, in my personal opinion, than establishing higher highs, because you have to have higher lows first in order to break and create higher highs. Okay, so again, it's extremely important to have that, and this is like the starting point. And our next step would be to establish a higher high, and at that point, perhaps buy in at the next Fibonacci retracement level. That being said, taking a look here, we can see the price once again, 128 would probably be the lowest point in which we'll see on this continuation sideways, pending Bitcoin doesn't have a terrible sell-off. Bitcoin does what we are expecting it to do and kind of come up a little bit, at least to retest the 31,800 range. We should experience $1.65 or higher and a retest of the most recent high from Optimism on January 2nd. That was roughly 2 trading days once more, where it tried to test there and got rejected. Okay, so we could very well see a potential cup and handle followed by a breakout. That is a very common characteristic, a quality that we see in coins like this on the lower time frames. Again, the smaller time frame you go, the less reliable those patterns are. But generally speaking, it's we're looking pretty decent here. We got really, I mean, it's kind of a stretch. It's close, but we are making higher lows there if you look at it that way. And then of course, kind of just working itself into this wedge type of pattern. So generally speaking, we're looking pretty good here. I do like what we see here so far from Optimism. I would say I'm cautiously optimistic about this one. No pun intended though, because I say that for quite frequently. So if you've seen my channel, you probably know I say to remain cautiously optimistic, but that kind of just works really well here. No pun intended. All right, so taking a look at the 1 hour, let's figure out one last thing and call it a day. We can see that we are breaking above the cloud, just barely. And actually, I got a community member that asked me recently, like, hey, when you break above the cloud, is that just like an instant signal to go along? The short answer is no. You want to have confirmation. So you want to have maybe, I would say, 2 to 3 candles above the cloud before you take entry. And I know that can put you in a position where it's like you're a little late to the party, because sometimes it can really start ramping up. But generally speaking, just because it breaks above that moving average doesn't mean it's going to just explode. Okay. Because you got to understand, on the 1 hour here, we are making lower highs. Once again, the higher lows is more important, but it's going to work itself into a wedge and inevitably break again, likely to the upside here, just based on what we've seen here so far. But there's no guarantees either. But the conversion line intersecting with the baseline here, the lagging span is partially free and clear of price action. So again, it's giving us like a 1.5 out of 3. What would that be? That'd be a 3.5 stars out of 10. I don't know. It's not looking fantastic, but it's also looking okay, I guess. Generally speaking, though, I would recommend just being cautious and careful at this point. Invest with extreme prejudice. In other words, do not put everything you got into a coin like this. Yes, there's potential this could go off and take off someday, but there's also strong potential it's going to go down because its ICO was not very amazing. It was unfortunate. Again, timing is everything. We've seen some coins before get wrecked, like ICP. They had like the absolute worst day in which it opened, and you can't, that shouldn't be a factor, but it is. So again, I do feel like we will see a $2 plus range eventually. The Fibonacci retracement does tell us that. And if history is any indication, this percent increase here of 57%, if we were to just say do that same thing here as well, it'd put us right at about $2. Okay, so there is potential for the price to do another one of these here. We just need to have more volume. And if you see here, we don't have enough volume to support that, especially not on a weekend. Okay, so I wouldn't expect miracles on a weekend from a coin like this. Okay, weekday perhaps if we see Bitcoin shoot up past 32,000 and get a nice candlestick close at 32 or 33, then heck yeah, OP is probably going to take off. It will become overpowered OP if you're a gamer. All right, so again, cool stuff here. I like it. Thanks for listening. I hope you did learn something here, of course. I'll keep an eye on this one moving forward. It is a commonly requested one, and that's pretty much what I do too. If you're ever curious like why I cover certain coins, it's based usually on the largest amount of requests that I get. So if you want to, feel free to comment below, make some requests, or message me on all my contact information down below as well. I'll be happy to work with you and help you out. All right, thanks again for joining me here. Have yourself a great rest of your day. We'll see you next one. Take care.